Hello from Mindset Daily, wishing you a day full of health, peace, and happiness. Thank you for watching the Mindset Daily channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support us. Thank you so much.
They think you're dumb. But what if your silence is your greatest strength? They whisper, laugh, and assume you don't notice. But what if you've seen it all? What if the quietest person in the room is the one God is preparing for greatness? They think you're clueless. They believe you're unaware of what's really going on. They whisper behind your back. They laugh at your presence. They roll their eyes when you speak, assuming that your silence comes from ignorance or weakness. But today, I want to remind you of something powerful. God often hides his strongest warriors behind quiet eyes and simple words. While the world is drawn to what sparkles on the surface, to appearances and noise, God looks beyond that. He sees deeper. He sees what everyone else misses. He sees your heart. He sees the fire you've been holding back, the wisdom you've been quietly nurturing, and the strength you've been building in silence. That's where the real power lies. Some people are loud because they're empty. They fill the air with noise to distract from what they lack inside. They need constant attention to feel like they matter. But you? God has been teaching you to walk silently, not because you're weak, but because you've learned that real strength doesn't need to react. He's been preparing your hands for battle and your heart for patience. He hasn't been pushing you down. He's been setting you apart. And those same people who mock you, who treat you as if you're less than, have no idea what they're actually witnessing. They're watching the quiet rise of someone who has been called and chosen. So don't be discouraged when they underestimate you. It's part of the process. They underestimated David, too. Remember, he was just a shepherd boy. Even his own father didn't think he was worthy enough to attend the anointing. But God said, "Man looks at the outward appearance, but I look at the heart." And in that overlooked heart, God saw a king. In that quiet shepherd, he saw a warrior. And in you, he sees something no one else sees. Don't waste your breath trying to explain it to people who are too blind to understand it. There's a blessing in being underestimated. There is incredible power in being overlooked. While others are sleeping on your potential, you're waking up to God's purpose for your life. While they mock your simplicity and dismiss your quiet nature, you are quietly mastering your purpose with clarity and conviction. While they pretend you're insignificant, heaven is preparing a table with your name on it. That silence you've been walking in, it's not empty, it's sacred. It's not weakness, it's preparation. It's holy ground, filled with divine assignments and unseen growth. And when the moment comes, when your season arrives, they won't understand how it all changed so quickly. They won't understand how you carried so much and still endured. They won't understand how the very person they called foolish walked out with undeniable favor. It won't be because you were the loudest in the room. It won't be because you clapped back or proved your point. It will be because you were faithful. Because instead of fighting for attention, you fell to your knees in surrender. That's the kind of strength the world doesn't recognize. They don't know how much it costs to carry quiet obedience. But you do. You've paid with tears no one saw. You've invested in silent nights, trusting God when nothing made sense. You've healed in places no one could reach. You've grown in seasons where no one clapped for you. And now, you're rising in silence, without a spotlight, without applause. So let them laugh. Let them whisper behind your back. Let them pretend you're not worth paying attention to. Because God is the one writing your story, and He knows exactly when to turn the page. He knows exactly when to lift you, and who needs to witness it. You don't have to prove anything to people who feed off your silence. You're not here to be validated by them. You're here to be used by Him. And when that time comes, your silence will echo louder than all their mockery combined. Some of the most powerful people in this world aren't the ones who shout. They're the ones who listen. They don't speak just to be heard. They observe. They absorb. They wait. And when the moment arrives, they don't need to announce themselves. Their results speak on their behalf. That's exactly what God is preparing you for. God is building something within you that doesn't need to be approved, applauded, or explained. A life that doesn't chase validation. A strength that doesn't crumble without applause. A mission that doesn't wait for permission. And maybe that's why it feels lonely sometimes. Maybe that's why it feels like no one really gets you. Because He's not building you for the crowd. He's building you for the calling. And when the time comes, when you reach the very place they said you'd never touch, when you walk into the victory they swore you'd never claim, when your life begins to overflow with blessings they tried to block, You won't need to turn around and say, "I told you so." You'll just keep walking forward, with grace, with peace, with purpose. Because the truth is, when they pretended you were dumb, God was teaching you how to walk in wisdom. When they laughed at you, they were unknowingly revealing the gap between your grace and their pride. Every word they spoke was not a sign of your weakness. It was a confirmation of your strength in silence. So don't let their noise discourage you. Don't let their mockery shake your focus. Don't try to rush God's timing just to prove something to people who were never meant to understand your process. Stay low. Stay humble. Stay faithful. Let them think what they want. Let them assume you're quiet because you're weak. While they pretend, heaven is preparing. And what God prepares in silence is never wasted. Silence isn't surrender. It's not fear. It's not confusion. It's not a sign that you've given up. Silence is the language of the Spirit. The world doesn't know how to interpret that. People assume that if you're not arguing, not shouting, not fighting back, then you must be unsure, afraid, or lost. But that couldn't be further from the truth. The truth is, silence is the shield of the wise. When you know who you are, and more importantly, who God is within you, you stop feeling the need to explain it. You don't waste your breath proving your worth to people who are too blind to see it. You don't need to shout to be powerful. You don't need to explain yourself to be understood. The greatest strength you can carry is peace. Peace in the middle of chaos. That's where real power lies. And the only way to carry that kind of peace, the kind that stands firm in the middle of chaos, is to understand something critical. Your silence is not a weakness, and it's not a gap. It's a guard. You are guarding your heart. You are protecting your thoughts. You are shielding your purpose. Because not everything is worthy of your reaction, and not everyone deserves your response. You learn over time that silence isn't avoidance, it's wisdom. Some of you have sat in rooms where you were misjudged, overlooked, or even insulted. People assumed you didn't catch the whispers, didn't hear the sarcasm, or didn't feel the disrespect. They thought your silence was a sign of ignorance or naivety. But the truth is, you heard everything. You just chose not to respond. And that choice? That's what they'll never understand. It takes a level of strength most people will never reach to stay silent when you have every reason to speak. You could have clapped back. You could have said what you knew. You could have exposed them, corrected them, or embarrassed them on the spot. But you didn't, because you've learned something sacred. What is holy is not broadcast from the street corner. What is real doesn't have to shout. What is divine doesn't need a stage to be validated. The Spirit of God doesn't always arrive with thunder. Sometimes, He moves in a whisper. Sometimes, He shows up in stillness. And if you want to truly hear Him, if you want to be led by something deeper than emotion, you have to be willing to get quiet. That's why your silence matters so much. It's not just a wall to protect you from the noise of others. It's also a position of surrender before God. Because when you stop speaking, you finally make space to start listening. And when you begin to listen, the Lord will speak. He won't just comfort your pain. He will give you strategy. He will give you wisdom. He will give you direction for the next step ahead. So don't let people bait you into emotional traps. Don't let their insults become the topic of your response. Don't allow their chaos to shape your climate. You weren't made for that. You weren't designed to react to every dart thrown your way. You were built to rise above it. And that rise? It begins with restraint. Every single time you choose not to engage, you're stepping further into the strength God has placed within you. You grow stronger every time you choose peace over pride. Every time you resist the urge to retaliate, you win a battle no one else even knows is happening. I know. It hurts when people lie about you. It stings when they twist your words, when they misrepresent your heart, when they tell stories that conveniently leave out the truth. That kind of betrayal cuts deep. But here's the truth. Not every rumor needs to be chased. Not every lie deserves a response. You weren't called to clean up every mess people make with your name. Because here's the power of silence. It outlives slander. And time has a way of pulling back the curtain. What noise tries to cover up, time quietly reveals. And while others fight dirty, God honors those who trust Him enough to stay clean. Remember, Jesus stood before Pilate. He was falsely accused, questioned again and again. And what did He do? The Bible says He answered him not a word. Why? Because truth doesn't argue with deception. Light doesn't engage in debates with darkness. Light just shines. Truth just stands. It doesn't have to defend itself. It simply endures. That's what your silence is doing. It's standing when others expected you to fall. It's shining when they hoped you'd shrink. It's showing strength that doesn't need to raise its voice. That kind of stillness, that kind of restraint, it carries undeniable power. There is wisdom in not reacting. When people pretend you're dumb, they're not truly insulting you. They're exposing themselves. They reveal their own character, their own insecurity, their own lack of depth. And when they try to provoke you, when they push you to break your silence, to lash out, to prove them wrong, don't take the bait. Because that silence, it's not for them. It's for you. It's a sacred space between your soul and God's plan. A quiet place where He teaches you how to trust Him more than your emotions. Where He trains you to lean on His wisdom more than your own logic. Let them wonder what you're thinking. Let them be confused by your calm. Let them waste their energy trying to interpret your silence. Because while they're spending their strength trying to figure you out, you're conserving yours for what really matters. You're not holding your words because you're unsure. You're holding them because you're saving them for something greater. You're reserving your energy, guarding your voice, and waiting for the appointed time. You're listening more than you speak, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Because you're no longer moved by impulse, you're guided by purpose. You don't need to be loud to be heard in heaven. You don't need a spotlight to be seen by God. So, walk in silence. Not because you have nothing to say, but because what you carry is far too sacred to waste on noise. Your silence is not emptiness. It's intentional. Let it be your shield. Because in that stillness, God is still speaking. Every insult you've received, every time someone laughed at your dream, every whisper behind your back, it wasn't wasted. Not a single word. Not a single wound. The enemy wants you to believe those moments were the end of your story. But they weren't. They were fuel. Those painful moments were never meant to break you. They were meant to build you. If you don't waste them on bitterness, if you refuse to let your heart grow cold, God will use every single one of them to elevate you into the place He's been preparing all along. Sometimes, rejection wakes up something inside of you that comfort never could. It calls out the calling buried beneath your doubt. And strangely, insults have a way of sharpening your vision, making it clearer who you are and what you're meant to do. When they laughed at you, when they dismissed you, when they said you'd never make it, they weren't destroying you. They were chiseling you. Like a sculptor shaping something powerful and precise. Every blow was removing what didn't belong. But if you had reacted out of anger, if you had let their words settle in your soul and poison your spirit, you would have missed the blessing hidden in the breaking. Bitterness is a thief. It doesn't just steal your joy. It steals your clarity, your focus, your peace. It keeps you replaying the same hurt again and again, until you lose sight of who you really are. So don't hand that kind of power over to anyone. Don't let their cruelty define your character. You are not who they said you were. You are not the joke they made. You are not the label they tried to stick on you. You are who God says you are, and that truth outweighs every lie spoken against you. Every insult is simply another reminder that you're rising higher than they ever imagined. People don't throw stones at what's behind them. They throw them at what's ahead, what intimidates them, what threatens their comfort. So if you're under attack, if you're being misjudged, misunderstood, or underestimated, it's because there's something in you that shakes what's around you. But here's the key. If you carry your pain the right way, if you surrender it to God instead of lashing out, it becomes something else entirely. That pain, it becomes power. That rejection, it becomes revelation. That insult, it becomes instruction. And in that transformation, you begin to see it clearly. God wasn't punishing you. He was preparing you, promoting you. But don't be fooled. It's still a test. Every insult is a test. Will you take the bait and respond with vengeance? Or will you rise with vision? Will you let their words take up space in your spirit? Or will you evict every lie with the truth of who you are? Because the moment you let bitterness in, it starts to slow you down. You lose focus. You forget the promise. And suddenly, you're fighting battles that were never yours to fight. But God never called you to live like that. He didn't call you to war with words. He called you to walk with grace. To bless those who curse you. To love those who hate you. Not because they deserve your love, but because you've grown beyond the need to prove anything to them. That's what real strength looks like. That's what it means to walk in purpose. You could respond with anger, but instead you choose peace. You could strike back, but you stay still. And it's not because you're weak. It's because you've already won. Victory doesn't always look like a comeback. Sometimes it looks like calm. It looks like silence. It looks like walking forward without needing to explain yourself. So let them insult you. Let them try to break you. Because what they meant for harm, God will use for good. But that healing can only happen if you refuse to let bitterness take root. Don't keep hitting replay on the hurt. Don't keep feeding the memory with what-ifs and why-me's. Release it. Surrender it to God and say, Lord, I don't want to waste this pain. Use it. Shape me through it. Build something greater from it. Because if you allow Him to, He absolutely will. Some of your greatest growth won't come from applause. It'll come from the people who tried to break you. Some of your deepest clarity will rise out of the confusion others caused. And your greatest strength? It will be forged in the moments that nearly shattered you. That isn't a coincidence. That's divine design. God doesn't waste pain. He doesn't waste rejection. He doesn't overlook a single tear shed in private or a single prayer whispered through clenched teeth. Every moment that brought you to your knees was preparing you to rise in a way that comfort never could. Because it's in the breaking that the rebuilding begins. There are blessings waiting on the other side of your self-control. There are doors that will only swing open after you've chosen forgiveness over fury. There are breakthroughs that will only reveal themselves once you've walked away with grace instead of arguing for validation. And when you finally reach that sacred place, when you stop gripping the insult, when you release the need to prove your worth, you'll experience a new kind of freedom. A breath you didn't know you were holding. You'll look back and see clearly. What they said never really mattered. But what God is doing, that changes everything. So don't let their actions turn your heart bitter. Let them refine you. Don't carry the weight of their opinions. Carry the weight of God's calling on your life. Move forward, not with resentment in your chest, but with fire in your soul. Because they didn't break you. They stirred you. And if they hadn't doubted you, maybe you wouldn't have awakened. But now, you're rising, and their words? They're just distant echoes fading behind your steps. Let every insult be fuel, not a chain. And let your next step be one of power. Sometimes, the wisest thing you can do is say nothing at all. Let people talk. Let them assume they've got you all figured out. Let them misread your silence as confusion or weakness. While they're busy running their mouths, you're running the race that God Himself has set before you. While they try to put labels on you, your character is being refined by something far deeper and far more powerful than their shallow opinions. You're not standing still, you're standing firm. You're not ignoring the noise, you're rising above it. Because in that silence, you're doing the work that matters most. You're listening, you're learning, and whether they realize it or not, you're allowing them to reveal more about themselves than you ever needed to ask. Their words uncover motives. Their reactions unveil intentions. All while you stay grounded. We live in a world that rewards noise. A world that confuses being loud with being wise. But true wisdom? It doesn't have to shout. Discernment doesn't crave the spotlight. In fact, some of the sharpest wisdom is wrapped in quiet patience, in steady observation. While others are eager to speak, those with understanding stay silent, absorbing, discerning, watching. You're not passive. You're precise. You're not behind. You're aligned. You're walking in step with a God who speaks, not in chaos, but in whispers. A God who doesn't need volume to deliver clarity. There's something sacred about restraint. There's an undeniable strength in allowing others to speak too much while you intentionally say nothing. That silence. It's not weakness. It's strategy. It's not surrender. It's mastery. You know what it means to watch without reacting. And in that still space, God opens your eyes to what's really happening. You begin to see through the polished masks. You start recognizing the hidden motives behind the flattering words. You gain clarity on who truly supports you and who's just pretending to. And all of it unfolds not in shouting matches, but in the stillness you've chosen to honor. There were times they smiled to your face, only to tear you down the moment you turned away. You caught the subtle jabs disguised as compliments. You sensed the chill behind their overly friendly tone. But still, you said nothing. And it wasn't because you were unaware of what they were doing. It was because you knew exactly who was standing beside you. You understood that your silence wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. You knew that holding your peace would preserve your integrity, and that God would defend you in ways your words never could. Let them talk. Let them assume you're not watching. Because every time they think you're unaware, they reveal more about themselves and give you even greater clarity. They think you're slow to respond, but you're storing every detail. They think you're too quiet to fight back, but you're winning battles they don't even realize exist. The truth is, the quiet ones are often the most dangerous, not because they're plotting harm, but because they don't waste energy trying to be noticed. They conserve their strength, they stay ready, and they wait patiently for the moment when God says, "Now." There's a reason Jesus didn't respond to every accusation hurled his way. There's a reason he didn't defend himself every time he was misunderstood. He understood that truth has a voice of its own. And that voice always echoes louder than anything spoken in defense. You have to learn to walk in that same quiet confidence. Let the truth rise on your behalf. Let your life speak louder than any argument. Let your actions tell the story. Let the fruit of your growth silence every lie, without you ever needing to utter a word. Because that's what real strength looks like. It doesn't beg to be seen. It doesn't need to prove itself. It simply shows up and prevails. So don't rush to be understood. Don't feel pressured to explain yourself every time someone distorts your motives. The same God who watched you suffer in silence is the one who will reward you in the open. You don't need a campaign to gain validation. You don't need to chase down your name to rescue your reputation. Stay rooted. Stay calm. Stay focused. Because more often than not, the people making the most noise are the ones carrying the least substance. You see, while others are chasing arguments, craving attention, and trying to prove themselves, you're on a completely different path. You're not here to win every debate. You're not living for validation. You're walking in divine purpose, focused, intentional, unwavering. They might believe they're ahead of you. They may laugh behind closed doors, convinced that you've been left behind or have nothing going for you. But what they don't realize is that God isn't finished with you yet. Your silence? It's not the end of your story. It's the beginning of something much greater. It's the sacred stillness that comes before the rise. It's the pause before breakthrough, the moment before momentum builds. And when the fruit of your labor finally begins to bloom, the same voices that once mocked your stillness will fall quiet. Not because you silenced them, but because your life did. Because here's the truth. Those who talk too much often reveal far more than they realize. Gossip, criticism, assumptions, all of it becomes a window into their own character. Every reckless word they speak is a reflection, not of you, but of who they truly are. So let their noise confirm what you need to know. Let it bring clarity, not confusion. And when you recognize the truth behind the words, quietly thank God for the gift of revelation. Not every smile is genuine. Not every compliment is sincere. And sometimes, the most protective thing God can do for you is let someone talk long enough to expose their own intentions. That's why you must protect your composure. Guard your peace. Don't let the volume of their noise disrupt the clarity of your focus. Let them keep talking. Let them keep speculating, assuming, underestimating. Because while they're distracted by their own noise, you're quietly building something sacred, something that can't be explained, only revealed in time. And when that moment comes, when what you've been nurturing in silence finally sees the light, your life will speak for itself. You won't need to argue. You won't need to prove a thing. Because there's a kind of strength the world simply can't comprehend. A strength that doesn't demand to be seen. A strength that works behind the curtain and lets results speak louder than any words ever could. It's the strength of someone who's mastered the power of silence. Someone who no longer feels the need to announce what they're building, because they know the fruit will testify. Speak only when the time is right. That's a rare kind of strength. The kind that doesn't crave the spotlight or depend on applause to keep moving forward. It's quiet, steady, committed. This strength doesn't waver when ignored, and it doesn't need validation to stay the course. It keeps showing up, day after day, whether anyone is watching or not. That kind of inner power is rare, and that's exactly what makes it so impactful. You don't need to explain your dreams. You don't need to justify the vision God placed in your heart. You don't have to convince anyone to understand your assignment. Because if they weren't there when God whispered it to you, how could they possibly comprehend why you're walking the way you are? Why waste your breath trying to gain the approval of those who were never meant to see what was revealed in your private moments with God? You weren't called to be understood. You were called to be obedient. And obedience, especially in silence, is one of the highest forms of trust. It means you're not doing it to be seen. You're not chasing recognition. You're not moving to make a point or collect praise. You're moving because God told you to. And that alone is enough. That's where your power lives. Not in the volume of your voice, but in the discipline of your steps. not in how loud you speak, but in how consistently you walk in purpose. And let me remind you, there is incredible strength in staying silent while you build. Yes, people may mock you. They may say you're chasing illusions. They may call your effort a waste of time, but they can't see the fire burning within you. They weren't there in those private hours of prayer, in the late-night tears, in the sacrifices made when no one was watching. They hear silence, but God sees movement. They see nothing, but God sees everything. And when the appointed time comes, what you've built in the dark, what you've nurtured in quiet faith, will shine brightly in the light. Not because you forced it, not because you promoted yourself or demanded to be seen, but because God honors those who wait patiently, those who walk in obedience even when no one is clapping. While others were busy talking, you were busy preparing. And when the floodgates finally open, when breakthrough rushes in, they'll look around, confused, asking, "Wait, when did that happen?" And the answer will be simple. It happened in the silence. It happened when you chose stillness over noise, when you leaned into God instead of looking for validation from people. The transformation took root not in applause, but in obedience. It grew when no one noticed, in moments when you quietly chose to trust God's timing over public approval. You don't need to broadcast every move. You don't have to explain every plan. In fact, the more you reveal, the more you give others room to interfere, to question, or even to sabotage. But when you walk in quiet obedience, when your movements are guided by faith instead of validation, there is divine protection. When your steps are taken in private faithfulness, there's a covering that human eyes can't see. The less they know, the less they can interfere. And the less you try to prove, the more powerful your progress becomes. So stay low, stay quiet, keep your head down and your hands working. Because the ones who speak the loudest often build the least, but the ones who remain silent, they're laying the deepest, strongest foundations. That's exactly why the enemy tries to stir up distractions. He wants to entangle you in useless debates, pull you into emotional arguments, waste your energy on defending yourself to people who were never meant to understand your path. But don't take the bait. Your energy is precious. Your time is sacred. Every moment spent justifying your mission to someone who isn't really listening is a moment stolen from what God has called you to build. Let them doubt. Let them whisper. Let them assume. You're not here for them. You're here for something greater, something eternal. There is something profoundly holy about building in silence. It's not just about avoiding distractions. It's about maintaining alignment with heaven. Because in the quiet, you hear God's voice more clearly. In the stillness, you feel His presence more deeply. And when you stop speaking and start listening, you receive guidance that no human opinion could ever offer. Listening to God will always take you further than trying to impress people ever could. You're not behind. You're not forgotten. You're exactly where you're meant to be. You are not invisible. You are in training. You are in preparation. And this silence you're walking in, it isn't a sign of stagnation. It's the fertile ground where greatness takes root. Just because the world doesn't see your progress doesn't mean it isn't happening. Keep showing up. Keep putting in the work. Keep seeking God behind closed doors when no one's watching. Because the moment will come, suddenly, yet right on time, when what He's building within you will be so evident, so powerful, that no one will be able to deny it. Not because you shouted it. Not because you fought to prove it. But because He made it undeniable. So don't lose heart. Don't let distractions shake your focus. Don't let bitterness creep in through the cracks of delay. Just keep building. Keep moving. Keep walking in faith. Let your silence become the soundtrack of your trust. Let your quiet obedience echo louder than any argument ever could. There will come a moment when those who once mocked you, who whispered and laughed behind your back, will find themselves speechless. And it won't be because you finally clapped back or sought revenge. It will be because you never stopped. You didn't defend yourself with words. You did it with consistency. You didn't argue to prove your worth. You allowed God to confirm it in His perfect timing. And when He did, no one could deny the transformation. That's the reward reserved for the quiet ones. The ones who were underestimated, ignored, and overlooked, yet still chose to walk forward. With humility, with courage, and with unwavering faith. The ones who didn't need applause to keep going. You see, people are often quick to make assumptions about a seed they can't yet see. They stare at the dirt and assume it's empty, that nothing's happening. But just because something is hidden doesn't mean it's not growing. Real growth takes time. Deep purpose develops slowly, rooted in silence. And while others are fixated on the surface, God is working underneath, stretching you, shaping you, forming something eternal that doesn't require human validation. Because when something is born from obedience, it doesn't need approval to thrive. They called you nothing. They acted like you didn't belong. They looked right past you, as if your presence didn't even register. But here's the truth. God never needed their belief to fulfill his promise. He just needed your faith. God placed something inside you long before anyone noticed, and he never needed a crowd to confirm it. Now, the very ones who once laughed at you, who dismissed you as foolish, are left watching in silence as favor begins to follow your every step. They can't explain the doors opening in front of you, doors they thought were locked forever. They can't understand the blessings being poured out, the breakthroughs unfolding, or the glory resting on your life. But you can. You understand it completely. Because you know the silence wasn't weakness, it was faith in action. It wasn't passivity, it was surrender. It was the bold kind of trust that doesn't need to shout. You weren't moved by their opinions, because you knew God is never swayed by public noise. What touches his heart is private devotion. You honored him when no one was looking. And now, he's honoring you in ways no one can ignore. You didn't clap back. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't give up. You just kept walking forward, step by step. And now, the strength that radiates from your life, the quiet, steady strength, is something they can't explain. That's what happens when you allow your actions to speak louder than your words. That's the reward of choosing humility over pride, peace over retaliation, purpose over pointless noise. There's a unique kind of rise that silences even your enemies. They may never admit it, may never utter the words, but deep down, they know. They misjudged you. They thought your silence meant you had nothing to say. They assumed your stillness meant you had nothing to offer. But now they see the fruit. They see the undeniable impact. They see the fingerprints of God all over your life. And suddenly, they have nothing left to say, not because they decided to be quiet, but because they simply can't deny what's standing in front of them. And here's where your heart is tested. Don't let this moment turn into pride. Don't use your victory as a platform to gloat. Use it as a platform to glorify. Point everything, every ounce of progress, every open door, back to the one who lifted you when no one else was looking. Don't waste your strength proving people wrong when you could be using it to praise the God who made everything right. This journey was never about seeking revenge. It was never about proving anyone wrong. It was always about revealing the truth, God's truth. He allowed their doubt to serve a deeper purpose. Through their disbelief, he showed you more of who he truly is. Through their silence, he taught you to tune your heart to his voice. Every step, every pause, every unanswered question, it was all part of the process of becoming. Let this very moment be a reminder of how far you've come, not because of your own strength, but because of who you belong to. You were never walking alone, not even in the silence, not even in the darkest moments, not even in the depths of pain. God was right there, guiding your steps, whispering wisdom, wrapping you in grace. And when the time was right, he lifted you. Not to shame those who doubted you, but to firmly place you where you were always meant to be. It was never about retaliation. It was always about revelation. It wasn't about making a scene. It was about fulfilling a calling. Now, you move through life carrying a quiet kind of strength, a peace that doesn't beg for approval, a confidence that doesn't demand attention. You no longer need to argue your value or justify your path. You don't need to respond to every accusation or react to every insult. Why? Because your life already speaks loudly. Your peace has become the evidence. Your purpose has become the answer. That kind of power doesn't shout, it stands. It doesn't fight, it overcomes. And that is far more powerful than any argument, louder than any insult, deeper than any scar they ever tried to leave. So let them watch. Let them sit with the silence they once misjudged as your weakness. Because now, that silence is filled with something undeniable. The sound of God's faithfulness echoing through your life. What they once ignored, they can no longer overlook. Not because you demanded their attention, but because God's hand made your rise impossible to miss. When God speaks through your life, there is no voice loud enough to drown it out. So let your rise be the reply. Let your peace be the proof. Wishing you strength, peace, and deep joy on your journey. Take care of yourself, stay faithful, and don't forget to subscribe to Mindset Daily for more powerful truths to inspire your path.